Hey, how's it going, guys? Political Spatula here, back with another day of Propaganda Watch. Now, I've noticed something overtaking political commentators, and it is appeal to ridicule. Now, appeal to ridicule is a tactic that mocks, exaggerates, or makes fun of an opponent's argument to make it seem absurd or concluding that it is false without addressing any actual merits, okay? And I'd also would like to go back into propaganda versus news. I'm telling you this so you can keep something in mind while you're watching the clips that I'm about to show you. News informs with balanced facts while propaganda persuades using biased or emotional manipulation. And I believe that we're watching a lot of political commentators use appeal to ridicule to make fun of Trump or shoot down a lot of Trump's ideas or a lot of the things his administration is doing. They'll just mock it and conclude it as false without actually addressing anything. And throughout the video, I will be sprinkling the facts over Philip DeFranco's video, and then Marco Rubio will be talking in between that. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe and comment down below.
With this. We need to talk about Trump's war on what he calls far-left terrorism instigated by Cuba. Right, because the State Department, they just put out a 100-page report titled Cuba, the Capital of 21st Century Communism. And it's genuinely kind of insane. First, it claims that Cuba's singular goal is to conquer the United States. Then, it claims that Cuba's fundamental objective is actually to erase the United States from the earth. And then it's like, actually, Cuba wants a revolution against Western civilization itself.
Talks about the fact that Cuba's goal essentially is to erase the United States from the earth.
And how, you might ask, does this poor, isolated, resource-starved island intend to pull off a feat like this?
How did we get to a place where Cuba has become so much of a threat, it feels like, again, to the United States?
I think for those who have followed the issue of Cuba, this is not unfamiliar to us, but to the average American, you see Cuba, small country, 90 miles off our shores. But people forget that when it comes to things like espionage and influence operations, they actually are an influence and espionage superpower. If you look at the history of espionage in the United States, Cuba is the only country that consistently has implanted and embedded spies in our system without even paying them. We had an ambassador, a U.S. ambassador, who ended up being a Cuban spy and was recently convicted. We've had them penetrate the highest levels of the Defense Intelligence Agency. Ana Belén Montes was one of the single biggest intelligence failures on the part of the United States and one of the biggest penetrations we've ever had in our system.
Well, by, quote, the novel and insidious method of persuading the children of the West to turn against their own inheritance. But according to this report, for nearly 7 decades, Cuba has infiltrated the highest reaches of the US government and carried out one of the most durable and damaging foreign intelligence penetrations in American history.
So, and then on the influence front, if you look all throughout Latin America, every communist left-wing insurgency that's destabilized governments across the region, every single one of them over the last 40, 50 years has found its support, its help, in many cases its birth from a Cuban influence operation. So it was an important report just to highlight the role they play in our country, a very negative role.
It is a conspiracy that encompasses universities, nonprofits, activists, media outlets, politicians, and even the internet's Hassan Piker.
The report also links Cuban influence to the rise of Antifa, the riots that we saw in 2020, as well as the surge of radical activism that we've seen all over these college campuses. To the average person, those things, I think, feel generally organic, but it turns out there are a lot of different powers, Cuba being one of them, that are influencing all of these things day to day.
And apparently what ties them all together is a new and distinct kind of Marxism focused not on class struggle, but on racial and civilizational conflict. In fact, according to this report, you have everything from the BLM protests to the rise of Antifa to pro-Palestinian student activism being linked in some way, shape, or form to Cuban influence.
It's the same network of protesters around the country. They were the same people you saw on the streets burning things in 2020. They then flip it around and they become the pro-Hamas protesters, and they flip it around and within 48 hours of Maduro's arrest have pre-printed signs outside the courthouse demanding his release. And then they're out there doing the ICE stuff, attacking ICE agents. There's nothing organic about it. It is funded, it is organized, and Cuba is a part of that network.
And you've got this report naming dozens of examples of what it calls front groups and fellow travelers, basically the people it claims are somehow a part of this Cuban network. And yes, it includes people like New York Mayor Zoran Mamdani, Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass, Congresswoman Maxine Waters and Ayanna Pressley, but also former British Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn, Ilhan Omar's daughter, and even the co-founder of Ben & Jerry's ice cream. There are then also media outlets like Mother Jones and Democracy Now!, as well as activist groups like Code Pink.
And they talk about it openly, about how they will use that network to pressure American policymakers, not just here in the United States like Code Pink, but all over the world.
Plus Antifa, Black Lives Matter, the NAACP, and just a whole host of other orgs. Now, as far as how these various people and groups are linked to the Cuban regime, the ties, we'll say, are a bit flimsy. Some of them have just simply made comments supportive of Assata Shakur, a Black Power activist who was convicted of murder after a shootout with police in the 70s and then escaped and took refuge in Cuba.
And I think something people need to realize is glorifying a cop killer that fled to Cuba is not exactly a good thing either. And that's something that he very quickly glazed over. That she killed someone and then fled the country shows she didn't have to face the punishment.
Everything in there is factual, and frankly, I don't think they can dispute it. People can argue that we shouldn't do with it, and I know there are plenty of people in American academia and frankly in American press that sympathize with the Cuban regime and have for a very long time.
A not so subtle way of bringing McCarthyism back to the United States of America, and the targets are, ironically enough, also identical. History doesn't often repeat, but it rhymes, is what they say, right? It's a cliche. Well, right now, history isn't even rhyming, it's just repeating.
Part of it is motivated by their anti-Americanism, and part of it is motivated by ideological affinity. There are enough people in key nodes of our society, including professors, but frankly, in the past, we've seen people within our own government that sympathize with the Cuban regime. It's the way they get spies without paying them. This is 90 miles from our shores, a failed state 90 miles from our shores that happens to be aligned with adversaries to the United States is a national security threat to our country.
And you had him just citing isolated cases today, like the assassination of Charlie Kirk or the attempts on Donald Trump's life, and then asserting that they're all somehow connected. And Cuba, it's the key.
And so I'd like to touch on my original point one last time. Appeal to ridicule. It mocks, exaggerates, or makes fun of an opponent's arguments to claim it is false without offering any actual proof. And after all of the evidence that we've seen today, I don't think it is completely out of the realm of possibility for Cuba to have tried to assassinate Charlie Kirk or President Donald Trump. Well, anyway, I hope you guys liked the video. If you made it this far, like and subscribe. Comment down below. It really helps out a lot. And have a good one.